In the dying moments of the Battle of Endor, with the second Death Star crumbling around them, the father and a son get to share their first face-to-face meeting in a lifetime. Darth Vader, the terrifying Sith Enforcer, is quickly succumbing to the mortal wound he dealt to himself when he stepped in and saved Luke from Darth Sidious. The Sith lightning had not only coursed through his body, doing massive damage to his tissue and organs, the respirator that kept him breathing was also overloaded and destroyed, leaving his damaged lungs unable to draw enough oxygen from the air. It's unknown what actually kills Darth Vader in these last moments. It could have been a variety of different, health issues. Maybe it's his heart that fails him first. Maybe a tiny grain of sand from his childhood years dislodged from a small crevice inside of his body and gunked up an important artery, bringing his hulking mass to silence after all those years of fighting. It's something that I've always thought about, and I think something else that people think about is, what if Vader survives this ordeal, right? I mean, he's done the deed, he's saved his son, now they're having this nice moment where they're talking to one another. What if this could be more? Now that Anakin has finally turned from the dark side, maybe he could even tap into the healing powers of the light side of the Force. Or maybe Luke could, somehow sustain his father with his own Force abilities, or he could drag him into a Lambda-class shuttle and escape. Maybe there's like a Bacta tank in the back of it. Crazier things have happened in Star Wars, right? But no. That's not what happens, and there's a really good reason to this. There's a real good reason why Vader dies here. And actually, Vader's death isn't really supposed to be sad in this final moment of the original trilogy. This is actually like the good ending. The good ending plus. At the end, Vader turns into a Force ghost, meaning the essence of Anakin, the good parts of his soul, are preserved, while the darkness and everything else he did in life fades away with his physical body. That is a very good ending for Darth Vader, probably the best he can hope for. This is a good ending because the best thing that you can reward Anakin at this point with is just peace. Better yet, Luke and Leia get to continue on with their own lives, just like they did before, without a father. I mean, what exactly were you hoping for? Darth Vader taking Luke out to teach him how to fish, or, dancing with Leia in the father-daughter dance at Winter Formal? These things can't really happen because, well, you've heard of like the Nuremberg trials, right? At the end of World War II, where they took all the biggest Nazi scumbags, listed their crimes for all the world to see, and then executed them like a bunch of rabid dogs. That same thing is going to happen to Vader. I mean, he's a war criminal. I know, you're thinking to yourself, Mon Mothma called for an immediate end to hostilities and amnesty for Imperial officers and soldiers if they surrender. She wants peace. And so surely if Vader gives himself up voluntarily, he gets some of that sweet amnesty as well, right? Now, first, only the audience, you and I, understand the full story of Anakin Skywalker. Most people in the galaxy do not have that deep understanding or ability to have empathy for Darth Vader. It just doesn't happen. Only we know how he was as a child, how he was taken away from the Jedi, separated from his only family, fed all those illusions of grandeur and prophecy, which led them down a very dangerous road while simultaneously being groomed secretly by a Sith Lord. We all know that it wasn't actually really Anakin's fault that the Jedi were destroyed and the Republic collapsed, right? Like, he was just a pawn in all of this. That fateful night when he cuts off Mace Windu's arm, it's actually, from a legal standpoint, probably the right move. Anakin messes up, that's right, but again, the closer you look at his story, the harder it is to blame him. But then everything else afterwards, after he falls to the dark side, are very hard to explain if you don't understand the first part of his story. The murdering of the younglings, the increasing crescendo of war crimes and massacring of the innocents. That stuff actually isn't really Anakin anymore. It's just a side effect of what's known as dark side psychosis. Or at least that's the angle I would take if I were, Anakin Skywalker's defense attorney, because what else kind of plea are you gonna make except for insanity by the dark side? There really is no other way to justify any of his actions or to explain his actions to people, especially if you don't have like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to watch all of the prequel trilogy films and the Clone Wars series. And here's the thing about conflicts by their nature cause a ton of destruction and violence and anger, and that leads to extremism. And there is going to be extremist bad people on both sides of the conflict, not just on the Imperial side, but also on the Rebel side. You heard me right. Even a good faction like the Rebellion can have complete psychotic people whose only redemption is that they're using their chaos to kill Imperials. Like Saw Gerrera is a pretty good example of this. And so there are going to be people who are full-on haters of Vader and who will stop at nothing to make sure that he gets what he deserves. And, what that means is really open to interpretation by the individual. Maybe they want him to die slowly. Maybe they want him to be ripped apart by, the Force or something like that. There are a lot of unbalanced and insane people who are heavily traumatized and affected by the Galactic Civil War, and they're not just going to watch Darth Vader get like a plea bargain. You know what I mean? It's not going to go well for him. And those people, they definitely are not going to listen to Anakin's sob story about his horrible upbringing, about how a lot of things out of his control set them on this course. For some people, the crimes he did were too horrific. The pain he causes is too real. They just want to see him burn because they no longer can reason. And this is why war is horrible. Not to blame victims or not to shame the victims, but once you're directly affected by a conflict and you become a part of that conflict, it becomes almost impossible for that person to become part of the solution because the damage is just too real. Most people don't know how to forgive and forget. And here's the thing, people often compare Vader to Himmler or Göring. The truth is, not even the Nazis had someone as terrifying, I guess, as Vader was. You see, Vader wasn't just evil. There's plenty of evil individuals in the Nazi party, but Vader is also a superhuman, which kind of lifts the terror we feel about him to another level. While Rebel intelligence probably eventually pieces together the information that Vader was most likely a former Jedi who had fallen to the dark side and was now aiding Palpatine, your average Rebel trooper or pilot might not even believe in the Force or know what the Force is or understand what a Jedi or Sith is, and so when they see, Vader out in the field, they think he's like a mythical creature or something like that. And we all know, the eyes and the brain, they're not the most accurate way to record information, especially on a battlefield when people are stressed out and they're, ducking their heads, their views are obscured because they're trying to keep alive. And so it's easy to discount the first reports of Vader in the field because, the brain is hypersensitive and alert and we can see things and hear things that don't exist. That 8-foot Wookiee that knocked you out with a massive tree branch, well, that was just a 3-foot Ewok with a stick. That squadron of X-Wings and Mon Cala cruiser that disabled your Star Destroyer is actually just a Corellian freighter. A single Corellian freighter. And if you're used to hearing soldiers talk about nonsense like this, you're going to demand video evidence, right? I mean, you're not going to believe any of this happens until you see the footage. But the kicker here is this is all real, and there was footage. I mean, imagine witnessing the surveillance video of Vader lifting people in the air and exploding their hearts. Imagine all of the Republic witnessing a man with a laser sword cutting another man in half on the HoloNets and then block 20 rounds of blaster fire before using superhuman speed to close the gap between another victim before quickly decapitating him. No, Vader was real, and that was a huge problem. He wasn't just a war criminal, a general in the opposing faction of a war. He was like a boogeyman. He might as well have been Satan, this kind of stuff usually doesn't happen. A super being aligned with the enemy with powers that no normal human being has is a threat that just keeps people awake. I mean, think about the X-Men storyline where all the mutants get thrown into concentration camps. The only reason that doesn't happen to the, Force users in the Star Wars galaxy is because the Jedi at least try to be positive in their own way. Actually, there was a genocide of the Sith, in the old Republic times where they literally rounded up all the Sith they could find and they massacred them. So this kind of stuff happens from time to time. So yeah, Vader is completely screwed. There really is no redemption for him, ever. Because not only is Vader politically and from a military standpoint tied to the Empire's centers of power, he personally is feared by every individual in the Republic. And because so much emotion, so much fear is guided towards him, it means that the individuals who are trying him have their hands tied. There's not much they can really do from a political standpoint to, kind of listen to his story and maybe give him a break here. So what Vader faces in the courts is not a pragmatic bureaucracy looking to bring a swift end to the war. He's facing the emotions of an entire galaxy that is equal parts pissed off at him and also extremely terrified of him. And so once you actually have Vader in custody, first there's the security issues of keeping him safe. I don't actually think Anakin would try to escape once he's in captivity. He would kind of accept his punishment, and he might even look forward to it. But the sheer amount of people that would want to assassinate him because of what he and Palpatine did will be impressive. You know how Luthen has friends everywhere? Well, Vader has enemies everywhere. He started off his career with the Empire by murdering the entire Separatist High Council. While those corporal leaders were not necessarily missed by most of the galaxy, their family members and shareholders will remember. Some Neo-Separatists will as well. You can expect everyone from the Neimoidians to the Skakoans to even the Munes sending their regards to Vader while he's in prison. You can add the Wookiees onto that list of people who want to kill him as well, because he burnt down half of their home planet and enslaved everyone by putting bombs into the heads of their children and women. He was also responsible for subjugating Mon Cala and imprisoning their king Lee Char. The Naboo hate him as well, especially Padme's surviving handmaidens, who literally started a loyalist group known as the Amidalans in order to hunt down Padme's murderer. The sheer amount of aggrieved people Vader has left in his wake during the Galactic Civil War means that this trial will drag on forever, because everyone is going to want to say their part and present how their relationship with Vader was like, and it's not going to look good. In this kind of situation, with all these heartfelt pleas to the jury, with the public looking intently at all these crimes, there's no way that Vader can escape a trial without execution, or at minimum a life behind bars without parole. I mean, one cannot just walk into a room full of children and murder them and somehow accept redemption. Even going back into time and murdering Hitler will not get you off the hook for that one. Even murdering Darth Sidious, no matter how courageous that act was, will wipe away all of Anakin's sins. And here's the thing, while some more reasonable people like Mon Mothma might listen to his plea, most individuals are going to come in emotional and biased, and they're not going to listen to reason at all. They're going to try to find every reason possible to hate Vader, and that hatred will also go to anyone who's in his defense team. And you know who's going to be defending Vader in court? It's most likely going to be Luke Skywalker, the only person who actually witnessed the end events with Vader. It's really his word versus all of the known crimes that Vader has committed in front of other people. It's going to be Luke Skywalker trying to protect his own father in front of a bunch of victims of Darth Vader. It is not going to look good. And again, it's not really about winning or losing this trial from a legal point of view. I don't think anyone is going to even care. I think what people are going to be focusing on are the horrific stories of Darth Vader torturing innocent people, exploding people's hearts with the Force. Stuff that is terrifying and also visually just so evil. And then to make matters even worse, you have to listen to Luke Skywalker, hero of the rebellion, kind of destroy his own credibility by claiming, Vader's not a bad guy anymore, he's my father, I used the Force to feel him out, he's good now, guys. Like, there's no way that's going to hold up in court. There's no way he's going to be able to make that argument to a jury and they'll listen to him. Because again, the jury is just going to be regular citizens, not Star Wars fans who have seen the redemption arc of Revan, who understand the pull the dark side has on people. The majority of people are going to look at Luke and be like, oh, look, I respect what you did in the rebellion. It's all cool that you're a little, screwy now, but how can we move this forward so we can kill Darth Vader? Because that's what everyone wants. And so, yeah, Vader surviving and going to the trial will bring Luke into the picture. And, let's be honest, the earnest young man from Tatooine is a bit too naive to actually navigate a trial like this or deal with the savvy politicians and media types. And so what ends up happening is Princess Leia, if she has a heart, is going to have to help Luke. This is really her arena. And honestly, I think that's what Anakin was thinking about in those last few moments of his life. Like, what happens to Luke? What happens to Leia? Like, if he actually goes back to the New Republic, he's going to drag his kids through a lot of nonsense, and he's already done a lot of harm to their lives, and I think that's really the last thing he wants to do. So yeah, I think Anakin could have preserved his body a little longer. He could have used the Force to reinforce his breathing so he doesn't die immediately. But I also think there's a freedom to all of this, right? He becomes free from the dark side when he gets hit by all that lightning from Sidious. It's in that moment he's returned to clarity, and I think with this new clarity, he understands that he has to let go of things finally, stop being selfish, because that's what really killed Padme the first time around. His obsession with her, his unwillingness to let go of her so that he could focus more on being a Jedi. And I think this haunted him all throughout his time as Darth Vader. Darth Vader is not exactly a free individual when he's in the Empire. Yes, people were terrified of him, but it's not like Vader enjoyed this in any way. He's a completely broken man, and there are many reports of him hating his life, being extremely depressed. We oftentimes see him in his meditation chamber thinking about Padme, about everything that went wrong with his life. If anything, Vader feels weak this entire time, completely unable to free himself until finally he wrestles back some sense of control in his life by saving his son Luke, by finding that warm feeling of love that he hasn't felt in many, many moons. And now that the clarity has finally come back to him, he can really think about what's important. And the last thing he really has are just these two kids. And the last thing he really wants to do is bring any more shame and suffering to them. I mean, what's the last thing Vader asks Luke to do? It's to tell Leia that at the end, he became himself again. He wants her to know that he fought and found his redemption. He was proud of this. And that's all he wanted. He had no, illusion that he would have the luxury of being in his children's life after this. He couldn't. He's toxic. And this is a wise move because we know in Bloodlines, a novel that takes place after the Galactic Civil War ends, that no one actually knows in the galaxy that Vader is related to Luke and Leia. It's kept a complete secret. Leia understands that her work as a senator and leader of the rebellion would be overshadowed by her ties to Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker would suffer a similar fate, and his bloodline could be labeled dangerous. I mean, people might even frown upon the idea of Luke starting his own Jedi temple. And what we see happen in the novel Bloodlines is that Leia's political enemies would get their hands on a message from Bail Organa to Leia, which basically explains to her who her real parents are. Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala. While Leia doesn't suffer any official punishment, the court of opinion destroys her political career, and that's why she actually retreats from public life and starts building the Resistance. Things are a bit easier for Luke because he's living in the Outer Rim far away from society. The situation, however, does hit Ben Solo pretty hard and further isolates him from the other students, from his uncle, and even from his mother, who he now believes has lied to him. This might actually have been one of the major factors that turns Ben towards the dark side. But yeah, it's completely wild how quickly the galaxy forgot that Leia lost her entire home planet fighting for the galaxy against Vader, or that Luke also lost his arm to Vader before finally defeating him and convincing him to join the light side. Or the fact that without Vader, maybe the entire war is lost at Endor and the rebellion never wins. Ultimately, Vader's death is what needed to happen at the end of the movie. There was no future in which he could have grown up as Luke and Leia's dad, where it didn't cause immense problems for his kids and even the galactic government. And the sad thing is, no matter how much the galaxy hates Darth Vader, Anakin probably hates him even more. The body in which he created so many crimes is not the one he wants to inhabit anymore. It's like a supermarine finding a moment of clarity and deciding that it's time to leave the dreadnought he's been imprisoned in for so long. I guess it's kind of hard for anyone to justify like why you just give up on life like that, right? But then again, no one's really gone through what Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker have. That is definitely a very complicated life to have. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.